All right. So for the recording, welcome to the Eventlet discussions at the Flamingo PTG. And I think this is going to be quite structured and unstructured at the same time, but I'll let Harvey uh, take the lead on this one. Um, and I think please feel free to raise your hands, and there's going to be a queue, and he'll call on you if you have. So you can have your turn.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. I propose to start the PTG session by discussing about the current eventlet status. So the first topic that I wanted to discuss with you is about the maintenance activity on the eventlet side itself. I don't know if Jay is with us today, but my understanding is that my colleague Itamar decided to reduce his maintenance activity on Eventlet. So that means that it will really shrink our opportunity to migrate away from Eventlet because we are just 1 or 2% active on the maintenance side. So it will reduce the way we merge things and we review them. Hopefully, we won't be too much impacted. That's the first point, in my opinion, that is important. And if it is his decision, we are close to come back to the activity maintenance that we observed in 2023. So that's not good news. The second point that I wanted to discuss about the event status is coming support of Python. So I think we will spend the 3 coming months preparing for Python 3.14 because I think that it will be a supported runtime with G. If I remember correctly, Python 3.13 will be out around of November. So this is your next runtimes to support. And the third point, and not the least, is PEP 703 and the gilectomy. So you are not without knowing, but Python 3.13 introduced the PEP 703, and we recently observed the first side effect of the no-gill mode because having the no-gill mode introduced a way of identifying thread more based on the system thread rather than based on user level thread. So it impacted Eventlet, and it will solely require a deep refactor of Eventlet to be compatible with this new way of managing threading in Python. And the last point about the eventlet status is a migration Gantt diagram that you can find on the if you click on the link on the remodel eventlet org guide. I tried to give you an overview of the OpenStack migration and of the Eventlet coming steps. Initially, we proposed a timeline where we was thinking to migrate first Oslo library and the library, but that's not possible to fully migrate them first because as services rely on library, and as the services are the one who monkey patch library and the environment. That means that library have to remain compatible with Eventlet until services are not fully migrated. So we will come to this part of the discussion later during the PTG, during the Flamingo part. We will discuss more about that. So I will. Do you have question about the Eventlet status?
Yeah, mostly what you said about Python support itself. You want to work on 3.14 quite early, but from what I understand, there are API and ABI changes until like late August or something like that. So how does that work? I assume you've done this for 3.13, but I thought that people would usually wait until the release candidates to do that kind of work.
For now, we didn't yet start the work on Python 3.13, so we have everything to do on that side. But yeah, as soon as possible, we will start preparing Eventlet. So I hope we will have something landed by the end of April or May, or by the beginning of May. I cannot tell you more about Python 3.14 yet.
Okay. Okay.
In all the case, I will communicate and I will give you. I will share updates once I can observe things on the site.
Okay, thank you.
If there is no other question, I will let Daniel present his part. So, thanks, Daniel. The floor is yours.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi. Yes. So today I would like to talk about Oslo services. So about the context. So Oslo services was tightly coupled with Eventlet, and with the new goal and remove Eventlet from OpenStack, we decide to introduce a modular backend system inside Oslo services. So the objective was to create a plug-up backend architecture, migrate the current implementation to a new Eventlet backend, build a new trading backend without Eventlet, and try to keep the public API and change to have a transparent migration for user and just change the backend and not the code. So the new backend at the moment, so we have only in master at the moment we have the backend system and the Eventlet backend, not yet the trading one. And how that works, so we have a backend with like two functions, get backend and get components. By default, we use the Eventlet backend, and we will still use the Eventlet backend for a while, even when threading will be merged. And to change the backend or to use the new backend, you need to use, we use a constant default backend type inside Oslo services. So you can just override the constant to change your backend. And so in the new backend, we will use Futurist plus threading for the looping call. For the thread group, we'll use native thread, and for the service part, we will use Cotolidon at the moment, but maybe that will change, but it's what we use in the current implementation. So now it's like native thread, no green thread, Futurist executor instead of eventlet sleep. We will not support WSGI in the new backend. Again, we have the identical public API for the methods we still use. And yeah, for the user experience, normally that will be transparent that no code change, just need to override the new constants. Normally full backward compatibility. And yeah, and the benefits, I mean, we made that because with the goal proposed by Hervé, it was necessarily, but I think we have also some benefits. So eventlet free, thread safe, easier to debugging, no monkey patching, and we can maybe one day use async.io or something like that. And now the next step, it's to collect some feedback. So I think maybe we have the link of inside the Etherpad with a patch. So yeah, I will be happy to get some feedback. I'm working also on the unit test and integration test for the new backend. And yeah, and the idea is to full remove Eventlet in 2026.2, the version .2. Yeah, and I think that also the conclusion is now we have a modular backend available. The threading backend will be soon production ready, I hope. And the migration will be normally transparent for the user. And I think that's all for me. Do you have some question? It seems no.
I mean, just maybe just one general question. I
Yeah.
guess I didn't get looked at Oslo service, but I guess it's if I'm looking at the documentations for Oslo service,
Yeah.
see the different backends that you start to support, right?
Can you say it again? I have not here correctly.
My question was more about the docs that we have for Oslo service, whether we documented the existing backends.
Yeah. Yeah, I work also on the documentation for the new backend. So I have a documentation patch, and yeah. And so the idea we will have like two backends, so the eventlet one and the training one. So the idea is not to add like new backend. We will only have like the two backends, like.
I see, but then that will be configurable. Okay.
And yeah,
I'm like,
as I said, for change the backend, you just need to like override a constant.
a constant of what when?
So I have maybe I don't know if someone can who has the share screen. Can you go on the Git Git repository maybe?
Nobody is presenting his screen. I think.
Yeah. That's Jitsi. Jitsi just provides the data path by default. Yeah, okay. I mean okay. Because you said it's not using WSGI, so basically it's just like an Oslo service. So basically, when you create a new service, like say with Nova, then basically you need to modify a constant. That's what you said. There is no config option for using a different backend.
There was a discussion to avoid exposing configuration option to the backend or to the previous one, because we wanted to avoid end user which to use.
I cannot. I don't
see.
know if it's only me, but I cannot hear you correctly. But yeah, it was a long discussion about how to configure the backend. So I have first proposed like.
I see. I understand the concern. So basically, the concern is that operators should not be modifying it, but if services wants to use a specific backend, they can do. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes, that's a service manager that will decide when to switch or not to switch.
Yeah, so one example usage that you might want to override the constant in Nova Compute so that you can use the threading backend first there, but you do not add that override in the other services like Nova Schedule, or the Nova Scheduler might be using Eventlet still alongside with Nova Compute using a thread. So that's something you can kindly implement, though there still needs to be some consideration about the other part. I mean, as far as I know, the mixing up the threading model and the Eventlet model in the single process will be troublesome. So you might need to eventually, have the single switch for the old services. But yeah, at least the current code allows you to make the switch per process level. So that's how it is implemented.
Okay, I see, but then. Okay, you can hear me, but maybe it's my mic. Yeah, but basically, okay, I'm saying that because, for example, for Nova Compute, for sure, so we have the service, the Oslo service that we run, but then we also use periodics, and we call the periodics, or we basically run some other stuff. So basically, my main concern is that we want to make sure that basically the Oslo service backend, if say it's thread, for example, then basically we will run some threads for Oslo service, but then we need other threads for say the periodic methods that we run for the any other stuff. So basically I'm a bit afraid of making sure that basically, for example, in Nova, I guess we have Gibi here, but I think if I remember correctly, last PTG we said we could have some configuration options to say how many threads, for example, you could use by not for the Nova Compute service, but like for what we run concurrently within the compute manager. And my main concern is making sure that basically if the default backend from Oslo service is also using threads, then basically we can calculate the right number of threads in between Oslo services and the other concurrent requests that we do in Nova. But yeah,
I'm not sure I fully follow your problem. I think what you are touching, what you are touching there is a thread pool for the Oslo message request handlers, which could be totally independent for the Oslo service periodics using threads to run those periodics. So like, I think we don't need a single thread pool for all the threads in our compute. We definitely want a thread pool for the RPC handlers because we eventually want to implement graceful shutdown by limiting the RPC handler thread pool size. But that don't have to be a single thread pool for everything. It's like Oslo services, I think, still can run the periodics in independent threads from that Oslo messaging thread pool.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's correct. And yeah, talking about the Oslo messaging thing, if I remember correctly, Oslo messaging would generate the appropriate thread pool based on the backend implementation. I mean, if you have patched the thread, if you have monkey patched the thread module, it generates Eventlet thread pool. While if you haven't done patching, then it should generate the threading. So, but one thing you have to be aware of from the project side is that if you have on thread pool implemented, like as far as I remember, there will be the thread pool to control the concurrency of line migration in Nova Compute. Then you have to replace it if you're using the Eventlet thread pool there. Then you have to replace it by the native thread pool. That's the thing you have to be clear from the project side. But the thread pool used in underlying library, like Oslo services or Oslo messaging, is not something you have to take care of. As long as you override the root flag implemented in the Oslo service.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, if we have different thread pools, then yeah, indeed. Okay. Okay.
A little bit tricky thing is that you have to make sure that you are not monkey patching anything in the code from the threading mode as threaded version of your daemon. That might be a little bit troublesome point, but yeah, theoretically you can drop all of the event thread monkey patching, then everything should be start using the threading. That's the expectation.
Sorry, shall I ask what's the timeline for this cycle for Flamingo? So because in Neutron we already started some work to remove Eventlet code if it was possible and change to threading. But is it possible in this cycle, I mean Flamingo, to start using Oslo service, or we have to wait with that?
No, yeah. So it's the idea. So the patch is almost done. So I have some PAPE 8 to fix, and some for sure. I think I will have some feedback and so on. But yeah, the idea is to have the merge soon as possible now.
I think on the flow side, it will be your priority to review this patch. This way, we will be able to spread the new backend of Oslo services all over OpenStack components that are eager to start migration.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking that we in Neutron at least we have anyway some jobs to test with Oslo master. I think all the Oslo services, all the Oslo projects have the master in those jobs. And actually, you just discussed that to activate. I mean, to use the new backend. I mean, threading backend, we have to set a constant in the project repository. I'm just started to think how we can test that. I mean, ideally, it would be perhaps good to have CI results, at least as non-voting first, to see the progress of the projects, how they are changing, and how the code is actually working with the new backend, but with this constant-based selection, perhaps it's not that easy because you have to have different code actually, even if it's just a constant, different for testing it in the CI. Yeah, so that's perhaps something to think about, how we can test that. Yeah, actually, I have no good answer. Perhaps we can do, just pushing test patches in worst case, where we set this constant to, I don't know, to threading, or I don't know what will be the good value for this thing, and we can check that project by project. Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no answer for that, but yeah.
The first thing we can try from the Oslo side will be to merge that Oslo service backend approach as early as possible, so that you can, you can pull that patch in your test with the master Oslo libraries. Then we might also need to release that early so that it can be also consumed in the normal jobs. But for testing is a little bit tougher, but yeah, because you have to update your code to override the constant following the base design. I think the fact we have to do is to create a series of patches which completes the migration which completed at least for complete migration of at least one whole service, and then run some tests on that series for some time. And if you feel like you are quite ready about merging that in CI, then you can merge that, so such kind of thing. But the outside of that, the usual normal queue, I'm not sure if we can add a few more testing outside of that. Like a little bit, the a little bit complicated stuff is that you cannot set up the job with the same code using the different backend, because you need to change your code to change backend.
For change, you need to override the constant. So.
Yeah. But anyway, if this patch will be merged, and even if you can do the Oslo release, then we can later think about.
Or if you already have the master job, I think you can use depends on to pull the change from Oslo libraries while running the job. So that will be the way to test it the most earliest, I think.
Yeah.
Over a feature branch, you can override the constants and isolate a CI or something like that. This way, you can to work as usual on your project and observe what happens with the new backend in an isolated way.
Yeah, creating a dedicated feature branch might be an option, though. That also brings a lot of problems as far as I know. I know that Split has been doing this kind of thing for many times, but for the other projects haven't done feature branch thing for some time as far as I know. So trying that might be a little bit trouble. I mean, a little bit too complicated. So I'm kind of inclined to use the normal review flow with the job running with the Oslo master, which Neutron already has.
I see.
Okay, thanks. Anyway, we can check that with Neutron team later if we come back to this topic again.
Yeah, for the timeline, if I understand correctly, there is an update timeline mentioned in the Eventlet. So once the Oslo service, the new implementation of Oslo service based on thread, you can try starting the migration to a thread, but there might be a little bit remaining problem about the other part. I mean, there, as mentioned earlier, there are a few things like the WSGI thing, which is not imported to the thread thing. So you might need to duplicate some of the part. For example, we had some discussion in Heat earlier today, but we agreed duplicating the standalone Heat API script. And I think that most of the projects still carry such kind of the standalone, the API services dependent on Eventlet's WSGI service. So this need to be duplicated and removed, but that can be done before GL release. I mean, the next slot release. So that part might need to be covered while we can replace the Eventlet in the other parts. So that is some. I think that the monolithic neutron server is one of such an example, which uses the Eventlet WSGI implementation inside. So the plan about that part need to be, discussed a little bit more carefully. I think that I hope that just duplicating it and removing it will be a good way, but yeah, there might be some blocks caused by code being left until the next slab. So that might be a remaining concern caused by the current timeline.
Yeah. Do we have other question about Oslo services?
I think we can continue.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Daniel. So the next steps of the discussion will be a little retrospective about Epoxy. So in short, from the Oslo side, all the Oslo library deprecating their Eventlet compatibility. For now, the Eventlet compatibility remains in the code, but everything is deprecated. Allowing us to drop support in time when it will be possible to drop the Eventlet code. And I wanted to share with you two great milestones. The first one is about Neutron, who strongly removed the dependency with Eventlet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that all the work made on Neutron was strongly related to the WSGI drop. And also they implemented a socket server to replace the WSGI one from Eventlet Oslo services. Do you want to share a bit of that with us, Rodolfo?
Yes. Well, we did the migration. We should have done the WSGI migration years ago, but of course it was needed because we needed to remove Eventlet. So now the Neutron API is working fully without Eventlet. Not the maintenance or RPC services or periodic workers that are spawned still using Oslo services, but at least the API is working without Eventlet. And we also migrated some other agents, like for example the OBN metadata agent, the OBN agent, the metadata agent. Yeah, I didn't repeat anything of this. OBN metadata, OBN agent, and metadata agent. Yeah, these are three different things.
So what I did was what we did was the migration of the socket server that was using Eventlet, and now we are using a kernel library, a Python kernel library that provides the same functionality. We are in the middle of, and we need to discuss tomorrow about some other agents like L3 and DHCP, but I think they are quite close to be removed. So yes, we have done a lot of things this cycle about the removal.
Great, thank you. And the second accomplishment was about Mistral. Arnaud is not with us today, if I'm right. So Mistral is almost fully migrated. I think just the remaining part is about Oslo services. You can see their approach and see the patch made to Inspire if you need some way to start. And also, Arnaud give us some testimonials on the guide. So if you are interested, you can take a look to that. It can be interesting to see how Arnaud decided to tackle the Mistral challenge. So I propose now to discuss. Do you have a question? Okay, I propose to continue with Flamingo. So, as I said earlier, the goal with Flamingo will be to start almost as possible services migration. As I say, library have to wait for services to be finished. You can decide which part of the services you want to start to migrate by using this part of the guide, where we define some common usage of Eventlet, and it will help you to see your migration in terms of split of works. And it can be interesting as well to take a look to the common usage. We'll add it to the Etherpad. Really. So one opportunity also is to split your work. If you maintain a deliverable like Nova that is composed through many parts like Nova API, Nova Compute, etc., maybe an approach is to split your work by deciding, well, I will start by migrating the compute parts, and to tackle the internal API first, etc., etc. The first things that, in my opinion, you have to do is to start your deprecation. By example, if your services on config option for dedicated to Eventlet, it will be a good start to deprecate them first. This way, in one or two series, you will be able to drop there, and you will have allowed your end user to anticipate the removal. Another option is to start by migrating, by example, the WSGIS part first, as did with Nova. And if you have other question, you can join the if it is not already the case, you can join the OFTC channel on OpenStack Eventlet removal, and we will try to help us to answer your question as far as possible. I think we can now jump into the open discussion. So I will let Gibby, the mic to Gibby.
Yep. Yeah, just summarizing that long discussion there in the Etherpad. Nova got requests in the previous PTG, and we will discuss again this PTG to do the eventlet removal in a way that allows two things. One is to switch back to the eventlet execution mode temporarily if bugs are found in the threaded mode and waiting for like a hot fix for that. And the other request is to be able to upgrade to the next OpenStack version without actually changing the execution model during the upgrade, and change the execution model after the upgrade. So don't do two things at the same step, but do like just the upgrade first and just the switching of the execution model. And I think this is motivated by the fact that people are foreseeing different performance characteristics of the change, and they expect that they need to fine-tune maybe thread pool size, maybe the CPU and memory allocation of the service containers running this the code in the new execution model. And if that happens during the upgrade, that makes the upgrade very problematic. You don't want to upgrade to a system and then start being in an overloaded or underperforming situation. So instead, they will want to upgrade, and then when the upgrade happened and the new OpenStack code works, then start changing the execution model and fine-tuning the memory CPU and allocations for the services due to the new execution model. So these are the two requests we got, or basically a single request with two reasons. And now I just learned from the Etherpad and from the discussion that actually Neutron went that way, that their code is supporting both execution model at the same time, even though they need that flag to switch between them. And also I learned that Glances did very similar things, that they're probably able to run in both modes with the same code.
Jimmy, if you don't mind.
In multiple jobs. So like, it's not just that you can and we think it works. Like, there are jobs in both modes in our gate.
So basically the question from me, is there any guidance around this from the community level? Because from her way in the discussion in the Etherpad, it seems that it is discouraged, but on the other hand, I see examples this is happening, and also we got requests to do it, actually. So now I'm a bit. I know which side has more power to move forward. Like if there are really problems down the line to support this, then sure we won't be able to, and then we won't support it. But until we find those cases where we cannot do the same thing with cannot do the two things with the same code, then why don't we try?
Yeah, and how would it even work for CI? I mean, like, if you were going to make a big bang thing, like, either it would have to all be one patch, which would be crazy, or you'd have to break CI for a whole bunch of, a couple months while everything gets changed over. Like, if you're adding things that don't work in Eventlet, you'd have to, like, just stop gating. I don't even know how you would make it not work in both. Like, I would expect us to, create a non-voting job that runs it in threaded mode, and then slowly add things until till that job passes and the Eventlet job passes. Make it voting, have a release, then make the Eventlet job not voting as you go, and remove anything that we didn't do big bang cutover for Python 3, and I just don't know how else it would work.
Go ahead, Alonso. Rodolfo.
Yes, so I had the same problem when I was trying, because I did that locally in my computer. I didn't submit anything yet, but at least in the Neutron CIs for unit tests, functional or Tempest, it could be possible. It could be possible to create two different ones. So splitting the tests and the tooling, because there is a set of tools associated to those tests, and in some cases duplicated them. One for Eventlet and one for kernel, non-Eventlet. So eventually go migrating test by test, tool by tool to the non-Eventlet mode, and eventually removing the Eventlet one. Please, Sylvain.
No, just in Caracal, I will tell you a story. No, not in Caracal, but in Enthalpy. I tested with my laptop power management in Nova, and this worked pretty well. But 1 year after, I discovered a lot of bugs because basically the kernel was changing in between my laptop and I would say other hardware. And basically, it was a problem because we merged a lot of stuff, and basically, fortunately, it was a config option. So basically, we said, no, please don't use that if you use for production, because it's a problem. So my example was saying that's not because the jobs run and because your laptop supports that it means that for production environments, this will be working. And I definitely understand our operators that say, you know what? I understand that basically it's a tech debt. That's cool, that's a tech debt. I understand that you want to move from Eventlet for multiple reasons, but for me, this was working. At least the performance was working, and I'm afraid that you will be hinting me for some stuff. So basically, I want to basically what I'm hearing from operators is like, okay, if you want us to move, then we can upgrade, then we can check whether it works not directly on production, but for a specific environment, like a testing environment. We will look at that, and then we will change that.
Yes.
But it will take time for them, not for us. But again, as a reminder, Eventlet removal is just tech debt. This is not like a new use case for operators, right?
Good, wonderful.
Sorry, but I never meant to say that. Of course, if that is working in my computer, it is fine for production. I said that was a test, a proof of concept, that for testing it could be possible, maybe, to split the tests in Eventlet and non-Eventlet, and try this, have a duplicated set. I never said that if that was working in my computer, that was going to be fine for everyone.
No. I was sorry. What I said was just for me, like at least for me. I was saying that. No. My main concern is not about whether Neutron or other service doesn't want to continue to use Eventlet, but it's just a question from my operators. That's basically it. They understand us, but they're definitely afraid by the change. So
and like, just to give you some like tactile examples, in Glance we had it working, in the gate, and then like once people started actually trying to run it in this mode, we found that it worked just fine in file mode, but with Ceph as the back end, the Ceph library does some of its own threading, and so there was like a deadlock and some performance characteristics that were not ideal, that required some tweaking after the fact. And so much of like Nova Compute acts like it's threaded, but it's really not, right? And so even though we use locks and we think that we're squeaky clean on all that stuff, I am sure there are cases where we are just getting lucky because we're not actually parallelized in a way that will manifest themselves under this mode, right? And I feel like it would be really, really terrible for operators to upgrade into a completely different execution model, find that there are extremely weird, bugs that are not easily reproducible, and we have to tell them that we've got no way for them to back out of that kind of a thing. Some people will test in pre-prod and find things ahead of time, and that will be cool. But like, these are the kind of bugs that can come out of this sort of a thing are very hard to reproduce and hard to nail down. And I don't know, I'm terrified of not allowing them to be able to run in either mode, at least one bridge release.
Takashi, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to make sure that we all have the same understanding about the reason behind the current situation. So providing availability to switch back to Eventlet is something we discussed earlier. I mean, we discussed in the previous PTG meetup. That's true. But the problem we have seen after the discussion is that we actually try to implement the config option there, in the Oslo service initially, but we found out that implementing the usual config option is a little bit difficult. It's quite troublesome because the eventlet is always applied in the quite early phase, like even the import phase. So we have to control that behavior. Controlling that behavior from the option is not really feasible because the config option is loaded far after the module import. So that's why we decided to not providing the actual config option and decided to use the variable which can be more easily overridden, which can be more easily overridden within the code importing these modules. So,
did you say environment variable?
Yeah, we might be able to use the environment variable so that it can be configurable. But the next problem we have to think about is that the fact that we have to maintain two versions of the implementations in the code. In the Apple place, you have an Eventlet specific implementation.
Sure, and I think that is unfortunately probably the case for Oslo service, but not as much the case for most of the rest of the code, right? Like,
if you are solely relying on the Oslo service for everything related to Eventlet, then that will be possible. And we do actually carry two versions of backends in Oslo service, so you might be able to override backend using the environment variable. But if you have on your implementation, like the thread pool executor is one example you may have in Nova, then you need to make sure that all of the implementation will be magically switch between threading and Eventlet based on the backend selected in the Oslo service. And you also may need to implement the the abstract timeout implementation, which should work with Eventlet as well as threading. So we had that discussion in the email thread. And in that thread, there was some positive response about just moving to the thread and fix the problem if we find if we find after the migration. But yeah, if we still see the hard pushback about that concern, then we might need to reconsider that approach. But yeah, I'm willing to see some more work being done to actually find the trade-off. I mean, the main concern is that having the option is quite, challenging. And I would like to make sure that we understand the actual impact of that selection. I mean, mainly, I want to make sure that migration path is quite feasible before that we try to support more and more use cases or more and more scenarios. So That's a kind of main concern about this, the loss topic.
Yeah, I was almost thinking the same thing that Takashi. If you decide to propose a way to run on a model or another, and as you use Oslo services, as we say, Oslo services, the switch of the backend of Oslo services will be hard-coded in your code. So you will have to expose a configuration, which is what we try to avoid on the Oslo services side. So it will learn by exposing a way to switch the backend from the end user side. So,
can someone just explain, I mean, like if we don't do this, if we don't have the two modes coexist, like how are we going to, what's the plan for CI? Like, is there any way you can imagine us like doing this in a big bang conversion that doesn't involve disabling CI for several weeks?
no swear for myself.
I think the one example is the migration done in Neutron, like the migrating a specific service one by one. That will be a kind of the little by little gradual approach. But as I left in my comment, I'm not quite sure if we can use that gradual approach within the services in all services. So there might be a need to do some big bang switch for some part. That's kind of what I expect.
Okay, I mean, for Nova, I don't think that the going service by service is even really all that gradual because there's so much code that's shared between them that I'm just not sure that like our
yeah.
I don't know, but
there might be
converting just Nova Compute by itself is way too big of a bang, in my opinion, to do this. Like even if we did, like I can't.
Yeah.
I can't see. It certainly can't be one patch with a job can change in it. So I just don't know how we would do it other than having to turn off CI, and that's the last thing I want to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the main concern is indeed the big bang of changing both Oslo service and then I would say all the periodics that we have, and then basically the RPC that we use, and then everything by the same release. Because if we have a performance issue, basically if someone finds a performance issue, then I wonder how we could know about what was the root cause. That's my main concern. I don't know what to say. The problem with a Big Bang is that if the performance changes,
Not just performance.
how can we know? Yeah, for sure, this is not only performance, but at least just for performance, it's, that's so a large impact that it's difficult to find like any kind of impactful root cause.
Yeah. I also, maybe I'm biased. Since I did this, granted, Glance is a much easier environment than Nova. I have a lot of experience in Nova, so I feel like I'm justified in being terrified by this. And I have the Glance experience of doing the conversion and then fixing bugs in one or two of the implementations as people actually hit it. So I feel like this is doable. and that the impact of not doing it is so large that I just can't see I can't see us not doing it.
So, okay. I think